Hi guys, welcome to another episode of T.N.T. Garage and Performance. And I know I missed you a couple weeks back, but that's because here in Wisconsin it was sub-zero and just not fun, even with the old cancer cannon blasting away trying to keep the shop warm. So I took a little break. You know, the joints started to hurt, but we're going to be working on Fair Enough. Now, if you don't know what this is, first thing, check the playlist out because this is an awesome build. It is a 1973 Checker Marathon. Think New York City taxi for back in the day. It is built into a gasser with an aluminum-headed tunnel ram small block, a BorgWarner 4-speed, and all the other cool gasser stuff. Now, why are we working on it in early February? Well, that's because I bought a snowmobile in December when we had snow, thinking, it's going to be a good year. Then all the snow melted. It continued to be cold. So we're going to reverse psychologize Mother Nature here. We're going to start working on a hot rod, getting this ready to go out and have some fun. And then it'll probably start banging snow, ice, and everything around here. So either way, I win, right? But what we're going to do is we're going to up the looks department in this car. We're going to get rid of the third gen Camaro steering wheel that's in it, put this glitter wheel in it from Speedway, and we're actually going to address a mechanical want that I have with this car. Now, I do have a hydraulic clutch in this car, and it has a 3/8 bore master cylinder, and I don't like how far pedal stroke I need to disengage the clutch. So, we are going to move up to a 1-inch master. Now, you might wonder why we're skipping over 7/8 is because, well, I don't half-ass anything. We're going full ass with this. So we're going to learn together the differences in bore size and what they do to your hydraulics, whether it be pedal stroke, firmness, softness. All of that is going to happen in this video, so let's get to it. Sorry about the noise from the torpedo heater, but you got to pretty much keep it running. It gets real cold real quick. But this steering column is out of a 3rd gen Camaro, and I've just been using the 3rd gen wheel, but it really doesn't fit the vibe of this car other than cheap, because that's how this car was built. Lowest budget possible. So the steering wheel got it done, and now it's time to make it cool. So the first thing we want to do is remove the retaining nuts, which is probably going to be fun. Oh, there we go. It's not as tight as I thought it would be. Safety. But get this out of there. There we go. And then we can install our puller, which sometimes you can actually get a steering wheel off by just tapping the center spline or the center shaft with a hammer lightly and just yank the wheel off. I've done it on my Dodge because I was too lazy to grab my puller. But on these older GM columns, I really don't like yanking on them that much because with a tilt column, there's a bunch of bearings crap in there that interesting because I actually have the puller kind of backwards, and that's because I was using it to pull a damper. I needed a flat end, and I must have really jammed on it because I can't can't get the cone off again anymore. So we're just going to have to do it this way. It should work fine. It doesn't take a whole lot of force to pull the wheel off. So we'll just kind of keep it centered here as we do it. That way we can install our other wheel straight up. There we go. Alright, now go ahead, grab our parts and pieces, and start installing our new wheel. Alright, now that we got our wheel taken off, I want to orient my horn collar over here because that's the way our adapter is going to sit. So that's about how the wheel's going to sit on there. So now we need to slide our lock ring back on for the steering wheel lock, and that's going to end up pushing in the spring. We're going to have to use the bolt to push that on, and then there's a spacer that goes over the splines, down over that. Take a socket that fits over it, kind of drive this back on to the splines where it's a little happier. There we go. Now we're getting her in there. There's a big spring behind there, so you kind of have to wedge this on pretty good. There we go. Now we can put our adapter on and we can start running our bolt down. Once I find my ratchet, there we go. Got it on the lock. There. Now we can finish installing all of our goodies. Pop the bolt back on, pop the nut back off. There we go. All right, let's get our horn pigtail in there. There we go. So we got our horn pigtail, a small spring that drops in there, and then this black collar that goes over. We'll just jam that down in. Now we could slide our cover on. There we go. Then our wheel, bringing our horn wiring through our horn plate. And run our bolts in. Almost need 3 hands to do this operation. There we go. There. Not sure what size these are. I imagine they're a 7/16, but we'll grab that 7/16 socket. We'll tighten our wheel to our adapter, and then we can go ahead and put our nut back on at the end of all of it. So let's find a socket. Okay, that's the size we need. Just kind of run them in by hand at first. There we go. Okay. Tighten these down. Now, it wouldn't be a bad idea to use some Loctite on these, but we'll just give her the old heave-ho. These bolts are shouldered, so they hold the wheel and then they let the horn float free. So now we can put our retaining nut back on the shaft. And we'll tighten it down. There we go. And seeing as I don't have a horn wired up in this car as of this moment anyway, so now I got the horn wiring tucked away just due to the fact that I haven't wired a horn up yet, which I will do. The way this works is when you press the button, it makes contact through the shaft and all that, makes the horn operate. But for now, we're just going to install the button. So there's a spring that comes with the kit, goes on the end of your shaft, and it's got little dimples in it that go into this free-floating horn contraption here. And you just press against the spring, get it pushed down, and give it a turn so you can lock it into place. There we go. There. That, I think, looks quite a bit better. And it's about the same distance to me as this Camaro wheel was. Maybe a little closer to me now. But definitely gives this car more of that classic gasser look with the T handle on the 4-speed. The glitter wheel, which I know isn't the exact same color purple as the car, but it fits the attitude and I really like it. It's going to look good in the sunlight, especially after I get this dash painted. It's just going to be pretty dang nice. Plus a little bit of brightness in the car never hurts. So there we go. This is all from Speedway. The wheel itself, the installation kit, all of it. And it wasn't that much money. I think I'm in it for a total of like 130 or 40 bucks. I'll put the part numbers in the description for all this. Plus, you can get several colors of glitter wheel. There's purple, blue, red, gold color. And, you know, you can really personalize the inside of your hot rod. You could also get a chrome style adapter cover, which I just went with the black because I've got a black column. So, there. Now the fun part is done. It's time to work on this clutch pedal. Now you can see it rests a bit higher than the brake pedal, which isn't bad. I mean, once you get used to driving it, it's fine, but it disengages right before it gets to the floor and it engages right about there. And I want it to rest about here and give me a little more room and a little heavier pedal because manual brakes, pulling 2 carburetors with the throttle, this is way lighter than everything else. So let's get into talking about that master cylinder. Well, first things first, we got to get the front end open here so we can address what we got going on. pins. There we go. Should have enough to tilt this. Oh, just clears the garage door with the hood scoop. So I'm going to get you in here and we're going to talk master cylinders. All right, so let's talk master cylinders and bore size. Now, what's on the car is a 3/4 inch bore Speedway master cylinder. It's I think it's rebranded AFCO, but anyway, it's a kit they sell with Willwood pedal, and it works. It works great. I drove it on Power Tour. I drove the car a pile last year, put probably 2,500 miles on it. But the thing about this car, and when you're driving any car, is really having a balanced experience. So let's take this car for example. I've got a Corvette Master with a fairly large bore. It's I think it's a 1 1/4 inch bore, and we have a Vega steering box. It's non-power, so we've got heavy braking effort, heavy steering effort, and we've got a fairly heavy throttle with these two Hollies sitting on a tunnel ramp. Problem is the clutch with its 3/4 bore has a very light pedal and a fairly long pedal to disengage the clutch. So it's an off balance experience. Your input forces are way off when you're driving this car. That might not matter to some people, but it bothers me because the clutch in this car is actually lighter than the one of my Challenger. That's pretty balanced across the board. A way to fix that is to play with the bore of your Master. So, a smaller bore Master, the smaller you go, you're going to get a good pressure output, but you're going to get a softer pedal, less effort in the pedal anyway, and a longer stroke. So, seeing as everything in this car is so heavy and the pedal's not, and I'm running out of stroke to activate my clutch the way I want to, is I'm going to move up to a 1 inch. And that's just because I want a heavy pedal and a short stroke to match the other input forces on this car. And you can probably see, if you look at the castings, just how much larger this one is altogether. Now, this is a Tilton unit, and the reason I went with this is because, well, this is one of the few 1 inch bore Masters I could find with the same fitting size as this AFCO unit. I don't want to keep dealing with adapters and all this fits, this doesn't fit. My flex line will go right into this Master. It's the same bolt pattern. It's the same thread on the push rod. I could have went with a Willwood unit, but, you know, it's not really cost because they're about the same price. It's just the ease of this one. So I went with this Tilton unit, and this is actually meant for a dual master brake setup, where you'd set it up with a single pedal, 2 masters, an equalizer bar, 1 front, 1 rear, but this will work for our clutch. So that will get us a heavier pedal and shorter travel. So I guess one thing to do before we start taking this apart is let's get this car fired up and let's just show you the operation of the clutch pedal as it is. Then we'll install the new Master and we'll compare what we wind up with. All right, let's see what our clutch travel is with a 3/4 bore Master cylinder that's currently in the car. As you can see, it's a pretty long pedal stroke, but we'll fire the car up and see just where it engages. Want that to engage a little further off the floor to give us, well, just a little more play in case of wear and all those things. I don't want it directly off the floor. I wouldn't mind it if it didn't have a massive stroke before that. Say if the clutch started at the same level as the brake pedal and we just had that shorter throw. But let's get pulling this master cylinder out and putting a new one in. Well, the first thing I have to do is disconnect the clevis from the clutch pedal. All it is it's a clevis that goes over the pedal, a pin through it, and I've got actually the clutch spring that retains the pin, so it shouldn't be too difficult to get out of here. There we go, got the pin out of our clevis. Alright, underneath here, we can now just remove our master cylinder. What I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the line hooked up. I don't want to have the line open for any longer than I need to. So we're just going to remove the master and lay it off to the side as we're putting our new one in. Alright, when I pull this off, our pedal assembly may fall back into the car, but we will see. Oh, there we go. Alright, so this is our clevis that'll get transferred to the new master cylinder, but we're just going to lay this off to the side for now, and we're going to grab our new one, and I'm actually going to kind of reverse bleed it just to take care of any issues there so we don't have air in the master. So let's grab that and get it ready. Alright, so getting our new master set up, this actually has the ability to run a remote reservoir. We're going to run the fixed one. I believe it should clear our power distribution here. If not, I do have a remote reservoir setup that goes onto the master, and we can mount the reservoir anywhere on the firewall. But we're going to try this one first. So, get that out of its package. Get our clamp set up on the reservoir. So we're going to want to orient this with it facing forward. I'm going to grab a little grease, put on this O-ring so we don't tear it when we slide the reservoir on. There we go. We got her. There. Tighten our clamp up. Alright, now this one actually has a bleeder on it. So what we're going to do is basically reverse bleed the master with the help of a syringe. So, get some brake fluid in the reservoir. A bunch of air coming up through the reservoir. So next we're gonna get a line on our bleeder like that. Gonna set that guy up and we're gonna grab us a syringe. Now this is going to be the same way that I overall bleed the clutch as well, because it's just easier as a one-man operation. So, I'm going to try and set this up. I may actually mount the master just to make this easier. So, let's get the clevis off of our AFCO unit and onto this one. So I'll just cap this so we're not leaking fluid in case I tip it over. It's not going to leak past our plug. So we'll leave that sit and we will pull this off. There we go. Get our clevis off of here. Grab a pair of pliers to hold that. This is also another reason why I wanted to switch master cylinders. Is actually I had this clevis so far at the end of the threads that I actually boogered the threads of the clevis a little bit. Because I needed it that far out to get enough pedal stroke, to get enough operation on the push rod to activate the clutch. And that's what I'm hoping also to eliminate with this unit. So we'll thread our lock nut, or jam nut, onto this push rod. And put our clevis on this. We'll slide this into the car. Of course, since I boogered the threads, it's going to be interesting. I'm actually going to run it on backwards, try to clear the threads out. Yeah. And then we'll thread it on the proper way. Get them threads kind of unboogered there. There we go. Now we can throw her on. This clevis is just aluminum, so it's actually pretty easy to pull the threads out of it. So the more threads in it, the less problem we'll have. So we'll run it in a ways and see if we can do the dance of keeping the pedal in place while we jam the master home. Okay, so we've got it kind of set in here, but you can see that I'm going to run into clearance issues with my power distribution with the fixed reservoir on it. So we're going to have to go remote reservoir, which is really good that I decided to fill it with fluid. Not a big deal, we'll just dump it back in our brake fluid bottle and swap these out. So we do have the remote kit, and we're going to use this. So this will go on the master cylinder, and then this we can mount anywhere on the firewall as long as it's above our master. So we take our reservoir, put it on this, and then mount this above our master. So we're going to have a pretty diagonal line wherever I decide to mount this, but it's the only way to really clear everything. So let's pull this back out, and there we go. Let's dump our fluid back in our bottle, see how much of a mess I can make. Grab our clamp, we'll grab our remote guy here. Oh, this one's going to be a little more of a bugger to get on here than the reservoir was. Okay, don't want to pinch that O-ring. I might actually let this warm up a little bit, get it a little more pliable for us so we can slide it on easier. So I'm just going to set this in front of the old cancer cannon and let it warm up a bit. Then we'll come back, put it on, and then slide our master in. All right, a little trip in front of the heater. Just got this warm enough that we slid it on, no problem. And now let's get our master mounted, which is really fun. Feeding it through the pedal and getting it all lined up where it wants to be. All right, so I got our master hooked to the pedal. I got the clevis on the pedal to kind of hold everything in. Now I should be able to push the pedal assembly from the backside and finish getting this guy mounted. All right, grab our nuts. We're going to have to actually slide this out a little bit so I can get the upper nut on. This is going to be a fun balancing act. This is really fun to do with one person. So we'll run our lower one in at the same time. We're getting our upper one threaded. That's going to require a socket, of course. Yeah. So I'm going to grab a socket. I'll show you guys what I'm struggling with here after I get it and round it out. Kind of makes it a bear to put this upper nut on, but I think I got it. I'm just using the lower one to suck it up into place. There we go. Gonna be a slow process, that's for sure. Not that anything I do is overly quick, but all right, our master is mounted. Now we just need to find a place to put our remote mount, which I'm thinking put it up here. We should clear the hood because as long as we stay below the cowl, we should be fine. So I'll just mount it next to this ground here and run our hose right down to our master cylinder. So probably just put this on with a couple self-tappers. That's all we're going to need. And we'll run her home. So let me find some self-tappers. We'll get that hooked on there. We'll get our hose run that came with the kit down to our master. And then we can finally bleed the master, disconnect our clutch line, our fluid line from this one, and put it on this one, and then bleed the whole system. Okay. Using our reservoir as a template, kind of get it set where we want it. Right about there. And we'll drill the first hole so we can run a screw in. And a little mark. There we go. Run a screw in. All right. Get it level-ish. Right in that neighborhood. Drill our other one. Got our mark. And we'll drill our hole and put our two screws in, and we'll have our reservoir mounted. There we go. There we go. That's exactly what I wanted to do, was throw that screw on the ground. The old magnetic screwdriver to the rescue. There we go. There's one. And find our screw that we dropped on the ground maybe. There it is. All right, now we got our reservoir mounted, and we can figure out how long of a hose we're going to need here. So we'll probably just run it straight to the master. So we'll angle our thing there, try to get it as straight a shot as we can get there. So now, grab our clamp. We'll slide a clamp on this bad boy. And we'll cut the hose right about there to give us plenty to run this all the way up and get that all the way on. So I'm going to grab a razor blade. We're going to zip through that, get this hose mounted on, fill it with fluid again, and then we can begin to bleed the master and move on. All right, we got our hose heated up. Should be able to run it on a little easier. There we go. Grab our pliers, put our clamps on. That should be good. Hey, this hose is snug enough. You really don't need the clamps, but there we go. Now we can tighten up our clamps holding our reservoir hitch mount. And then we can tighten up the clamp down here. And we should be ready to bleed this. Alright. So master cylinder is mounted, our reservoir is mounted. Let's go ahead and get some fluid in here. And I'll show you guys how I reverse bleed with the syringe. It's going to take a while to suck it all down, to get it into the master. But this works out pretty well. I've still got good access to my brake master. You know, just shove the wire in behind that. And really, not bad. So, now we're going to grab our syringe, our wrench, and we're going to suck some brake fluid into our syringe. We're going to get it in our line, just like that. We're going to crack our bleeder open. Now when you're doing this, it forces fluid back through into the master. You don't want to push this air bubble in if you have one. You want to stop before the air gets down there. So, just like that. Stop before the air hits. Close our bleeder. There we go. I'm going to top off the master just to make it easier. There. This also helped us get the air out of our adapter to go up to our remote mount reservoir. Makes it quicker to fill and just generally less of a pain in the butt. So we'll get this filled up to where it belongs. We'll continue to reverse bleed the master. Then we can hook our line up and get to bleeding the whole clutch system itself. Also, it's going to be nicer to have a reservoir that we could just at a glance check the fluid level. I always like that versus having to pull the cap off of this or the old one. So we're going to pull our syringe back out of our little line here. Push the air bubble out. Draw in more fluid. Get it in. Crack our bleeder. And jam our fluid through. I could see air bubbles coming up from our adapter here, so maybe I'll get you guys in a little closer and have a look to see what we're doing. We'll close our bleeder off. There we go. So let me get you guys into a closer shot here. All right, so get this out of here. Get some more fluid. Get our syringe back in our hose. Just like that. Crack our bleeder. Can you see the bubbles? Pushing all that air through the master up into the reservoir. Looks like the bubbles have stopped, so I got you guys up here just in time to see how this is functioning. So it's a very quick way to do a hydraulic system like this, especially if you're by yourself. It's also a way to kind of bench bleed, but we're just focused on getting all the air out of the major part of our system, which is the master itself. So again, let's see if there's any air bubbles. I think we're bled on the master. I think we're good to go. I didn't see any air bubbles on that pass. So we're going to set that there for now because we're going to use it to bleed the clutch later. I'm going to top off our master. All right, so time to figure out what goes in here. This is a 45-degree flare, an inverted flare, and I'm not sure what this line actually is. So we're going to pull this line off and see, once I find the proper wrench, this might be, and it is 7/16. So I'll grab that, we'll pull this line off, we'll get it set up in here. I have a fitting in case this is inverted, so let's see. Now, oh, I got that on there tight last time, didn't I? Oh, good for me. There we go. Crack the line loose. Oh, we got the whole thing loose. Not what I wanted to do. Of course, it's a 14. Trying to take everything at once. Not really my plan there. There we go. Get our line off from our old master. See what kind of fitting end we have on here. Yep, so that's an inverted. So we'll hang that guy there and we'll put this fitting into the master, which is a 45-degree into an inverted. Quick, fast, in a hurry. Get it in so we don't leak a pile of fluid. There we go. And we could still pretty cleanly just tie our hydraulic line up out of the way. So that's nice. Oh, where's the 13 to tighten this fitting? There we go. 7/16 to tighten this fitting. To keep our line up. Kind of make it so it'll transition nicely. There. Now that we got our line on, once we get everything done, I can zip tie this back up and still have a pretty decent installation where the line's going to stay away from the header and all that. So, pretty happy with that. Now, it's time to bleed our whole system. I do have a remote bleeder line down underneath. So, I'm just going to basically do what I did to bleed the master. We're going to hook a line up. We're going to force fluid up through the whole system right into the reservoir, and that'll get our clutch bled. So exactly what I did here we'll do underneath. That way, you know, it's kind of hard to film under the car, especially with all this stuff. So I'm going to get that done. Well, all right, we got the install finished. Now what I was struggling with, putting this upper nut on here, get my hand out of the way, is the fact that this piece of the casting is really in the way for putting a nut on when you have the master fully seated onto the pedal assembly. So that's what I was screwing with earlier when I was getting this mounted. But we've got our remote reservoir up here, solidly mounted to the firewall. It'll clear the hood because it's below the cowl. I can actually check fluid level at a glance, which is good. We've got it running down into our master. We've got our line coming over to our brace bar, zip tied on and down. And what I'll probably do is put some insulated P-clips in here, cushion P-clips along the way, probably like right there, follow this seam. Just keep it out of harm's way, keep it away from the header and all that. But right now, it's pretty good. Another thing is I've gained a bunch of adjustability in my pedal. So the problem before was I had to have the clevis adjusted so far out on the rod to get enough travel on the pedal to push enough fluid to disengage the clutch that the pedal was way out here and it didn't disengage till it hit the floor. So I've got it set up to where it'll disengage about that far off the floor. But you could see our pedal is in a much more reasonable position next to the brake pedal. It's not clear out here, and I'm not goose stepping to try and get my foot up on the pedal to shift this car or to take off or any of that. So let's set you up, and we'll fire the car back up with the new master in and show you the difference. We'll compare the two side to side. And I guess let you guys make the call if this was a good idea. Okay, have you guys set up? Let's fire it up. Let's see how much better this is. It's already way better that I only got to do this, and I ain't got to do this to get my foot on the clutch. So, make sure it's going to keep idling. But it is a bit stiffer, which I like. In the first, right there, reverse, about an inch off the floor. It's not engaging directly off the floor like it was before. That is much better. Plus, just the shorter travel to get it done instead of this every time I want to shift. I like that a lot more. That's a much shorter throw. It's a much stiffer pedal. I'd say just a little stiffer than the clutch in the Challenger, maybe, but definitely much better. And with our old Master, literally as soon as I started pulling off the floor, the clutch started engaging. So we were on a hair trigger. And now it's about there where it really starts grabbing. So I'm pretty happy with that. Let me know what you think about it. All right, like I was saying, this is much better. The old clutch, I could easily just stuff to the firewall by hand. This one takes a bit more. We've got a little bit of take up, about 3/4 of an inch to an inch of take up. And then we got a nice firm pedal all the way to disengagement of the clutch, which I'm really happy about. That feels a lot better. So that is the difference between a 3/4 and a 1-inch bore Master. And I'm glad I just skipped over 7/8 and went straight for the 1-inch, because it gives me a better feel to match everything else in this car. And it gives me a much shorter pedal stroke. Now, I know you might think, well, it's still engaging right off the floor. I have about that much before it starts engaging, but I do have the adjustability in the pedal. So I could actually raise the pedal maybe 1/4 of an inch, and then it'll engage even further off the floor. So we do have room to move back and forth for whatever the clutch wear is, anything like that. Now, if you're going to be doing anything like this, like putting in a clutch and a hydraulic setup and anything, or changing your Master or a hydraulic throwout, what you want to make sure of, especially if you have a hydraulic throwout, is to make sure there's a limit somewhere. Because if you overstroke the pedal with many hydraulic throwout bearings, you'll actually blow the seal out of the throwout. This one from Speedway that's in the car has a retaining clip on it, so it can only travel so far before it stops. So you can over pressurize from there and still leak around the seal, but you're not going to blow the actual throwout bearing and hydraulics apart like you would in some other ones if you don't have like a pedal stop, or have your pedal set up to where like mine, where I'm basically using the firewall as a pedal stop. So it can't over travel because it's hitting the floor. So that works there. I don't have to put a pedal stop on my pedal, and it works out that way. Now I might do a little work with the pedal on the arm itself. I'm thinking I might move it over a little bit, give myself a little more room now that it's more level with the brake pedal and in a not lunatic area, way up here under the turn signal switch. So I'm pretty happy with that. Oh, I'm going to get off my knees though, because, oh, that hurts. Oh, God. Oh, not something you want to do when you're damn near 39 years old. That was a bad idea. Well, I think that wraps this video up. Making a couple of improvements on the car I've been wanting to do for a while, and just been kind of kicking the can down the road because everything did work, just not the way I wanted it. Of course, the steering wheel is more of a, look cooler one. It definitely brings some of that gasser vibe back into the interior of the car. It just looks really good. So that I'm happy with, but what I'm the most happy with is fixing the clutch pedal travel and effort issue. We've got heavy control forces in this car, being manual everything, and the clutch pedal was just such a light push and such a long stroke, and that was because of this 3/4 inch bore Master. So we put the 1-inch in and gained everything I wanted from it, which was a shorter pedal with a higher effort. And hopefully you guys learned something about the correlation in bore diameter and your pedal effort and your pedal travel or stroke. So that made a huge improvement overall with the car. Once I get it out, it'll be nice to kind of feel how my control weighting is a little more even across the board. And I'm really happy that, well, maybe we'll get this spring soon. But If not, I cross my fingers, we could still ride the sled. So either way I win. But there are more improvements coming to this car in the future. I'll be popping in periodically just to get some things to get it more to where I wanted it to be in the first place. Because originally this was just a budget build where I wanted to use more brain power and a little less wallet power to see what I could do with a derelict car, building it from the ground up into something cool. And it is relatively fast, but we want to make it quicker. We got about 4.25 horse under the hood with that small block, which there are gains to be made there if I swapped out some parts, but we're going to leave that be. We're going to start working on the rear suspension in this car. One is getting rid of the leaf springs. Not because leaf springs don't work in a drag application, but because one of the springs is in really bad shape and they're almost impossible to find for these cars. And I don't have the time to skewer all over the internet and search in the dark web and all this stuff to find leaf springs for this car once it'll fit. I don't have the time for that. But I also don't want to spend the money. Luckily, Speedway does sell a universal drag racing parallel 4-link that you can put in pretty much anything for around $400. So we're going to go with that out back with a set of coilovers, and we're going to get rid of the Dana 44 for a couple reasons. One, it's got 331 gears. Now, Dana 44s have a great aftermarket support structure, but strength-wise, it's in between a 12-bolt and a 10-bolt, leaning more towards a 10-bolt when it comes to Chevy rear ends. So, I really don't want to go with that. The nice thing about it is it's a non-C-clip axle, which is good for drag racing. In case you break an axle, you're not launching a wheel. But what we're going to do is put a Ford 8.8 in the rear end with 373 gears and a posi. We're going to do C-clip eliminators and make sure we don't have that issue. Plus, we'll probably upgrade to disc brakes if we can find like an Explorer that had disc brakes on the rear. So that'll be the rear end. We're going to make some improvements with the cooling system, not because there's an issue there either, but because we want to gain a little more capacity for when we move things further down the road and horsepower and stuff like that. So look forward to this thing popping in on the channel a little more, and check out the rest of the build on it. I mean, this was a truly fun project, and it's just going to get more fun the more we tinker with it and the more we can get it out and actually get it on a drag strip. So check all that stuff out. Now, before I kind of wrap this up and leave you with my typical catchphrase, I wanted to leave you with something, because I do this for the sheer passion of it. I love cars, probably out of the top 3 things in my life. This is just my comfort zone. It's my binky. And I realized kind of where that come from. And it was the last time I got to talk to my grandfather, and we got to sit and BS about cars as we were flipping through photo albums of everything he had, you know, from when he was in the service to, well, up until the end. And it was really cool to see the light in his eyes as he was talking about it, which showed me where I got it from and my love of it. You could draw a line right to it. And he had some cool stuff, from a 68 Coronet to some pretty badass ponchos, and even a Rover P-Series when he was in the Navy, which was pretty cool to see. I mean, he had everything. And the reason why I bring that up is because everyone that's in the car started somewhere. You could draw a line back to the first thing that drew you towards it. And the fact that it's something that in this world of insanity, of everything going on in the outside world, it's the one safe space where everyone can get together and just enjoy it. You know, whether it be motorsport, drag racing, NASCAR, F1, you know, 2 wheels, 3 wheels, 4 wheels, more wheels, no wheels. It's just the one area where people can congregate and have a good time without worrying about anything else. And that's why I love the automotive culture. And it just happens to be my family's legacy that we all have a love for it, from my grandpa to my dad to me and now to my son. And hopefully that carries on, and hopefully it inspires you guys to get out, if you do love cars, which I imagine you do if you're watching this, to get out and work on your own stuff, because you don't need to be a rocket surgeon to do it. I mean, I built this car. I've never built a frame before. I've never done a solid axle swap. I've never rebuilt a 4-speed, but this is proof that if you just put the little bit of time and effort in, you can do the same thing, and it's not going to break the bank. I mean, it doesn't matter what you build, just have fun with it. And while you're at it, take the time to share your passion with the people that are also interested in it, because luckily I've got my family to share my passion with, and you guys, you know. So get out there, start turning some wrenches, get out to the shows, mingle with other car people, because it is way more relaxing than dealing with the real world. So that being said, remember, till next time, if it ain't broke, fix it till it is. We'll see you soon.